I'm now joined with Mr. Anil Katarki, Chief Information and Security Officer of HP Enterprise Services. Anil, welcome.
Thank you, Naeem. It's a pleasure to be on the panel.
Right. So, Anil, you happen to be a GW alum. So I'm really curious, and I'm sure our audiences are really curious to learn about your journey to becoming the CISO at HP Enterprise. Could you elaborate a little bit on your career path?
Absolutely. So let me see, I started in this business back in the late 90s, Naeem. I mean, that's when I guess the internet was sort of becoming mainstream in America, right? We were all just slowly getting onto the net. I mean, America Online was the big thing.
Yeah, I remember those days.
So that's when
dial-up modems.
Correct, dial-up modems. I mean, you had companies like Earthlink, but that's when I started in this business. Initially the focus was all about learning how do you get, a package from point A to point B, right? It was all about routing and switching, and so that's where, my focus was. But then as I got more into it, it's like, fine, as we can move data from point A to point B, how do we now start securing this information? So that's where, it sort of my interest started peaking more in how do we ensure the confidentiality? How do we ensure the integrity of this data, right? So that kind of piqued my interest. So I happened to, at that time, join a company called PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I joined in their technology risk services practice. And the focus was primarily on auditing IT security systems. And the moment was right. George Washington University at that time had a program. You take certain courses for a certificate program in information assurance, which leads to a master's, in systems engineering or engineering management. I've always wanted to pursue a career, a master's program in business. So I did end up taking a lot of my core courses at GW, which were focused on information assurance. Kind of fit nicely with what I was doing at work. So the topics were just really relevant at that point. Continued, but at the end of the day, Naeem, I think what really helped me was combining the security background and the business aspect, right? Security has to be a business enabler. Unless you can bridge the two, and then you start getting more into the strategy, how do you sort of visualize what's the next step here? So I think I kind of tried to focus my career along that path. So while I had the technical background, I had the formal education, information assurance, bridging that with the business aspect. What is the business trying to do? Where is the business trying to go? What is the risk appetite? So I think the training at George Washington, whether it's the information assurance program, whether it is the school of, I actually graduated with my master's was in engineering and technology management. So being able to bridge the cybersecurity background with the business background, I think really helped me sort of rise through the ranks and start looking at, this from a more strategic standpoint. Standing up programs and working with the businesses to get them to achieve what they want, but achieve it in a more secure manner.
Right. So, one of the big responsibilities you have is to actually ensure that, in all the organizations that you serve, that security is there as a mantra that's kind of embedded within the different players, right? That includes probably the software developers to people who are actually in the administration group, right? So how do you actually go about having the ownership of cybersecurity with these actors within the organization?
So I've always said, for us, when we come in, or as an organization that's responsible for working with different business units to help them, manage their risks, it's really important, one, for the business to know, what their key critical assets are, right? So every business has those key assets, or what I call the crown jewels, that are so important, for them to achieve their mission. And so it's important for each business unit to really understand what those crown jewels are. Do some type of business impact analysis. Unless you've really done some type of impact analysis to understand, a lack of a particular system or a particular application, how does it impact me? How resilient is my organization, without a particular, application or a system? It really, becomes difficult for someone coming outside to start helping them. But once the business has done that type of, due diligence, then I mean, like as cybersecurity professionals, we can come in and say, okay, if these are your core assets, now let's start looking at, I mean, like how are these applications communicating? Who has access to these applications? Where are these applications being hosted? I mean, like, and then start working through, I mean, like the risk, what we call the risk management framework.
So that's an interesting thing you talked about, right? So the influx of brand new technologies, whether you think about big data, analytics, really touching a lot of the data that, you and I might really, really care about, or organizations might care about. Where do you think the cybersecurity frameworks are going to be evolving over the next period to actually manage and mitigate those sorts of new applications coming in and the risks that they bring with it?
A very interesting question. So, in this new day and age, what we call the new style of IT, I mean, like, whether it's mobility, virtualization, cloud, what's happening is the boundaries are blurring. I mean, so you no longer have the traditional, I mean, like a framework where I can look at 5 servers and these are my applications, and we call them the go hug my server, and this is what I want to protect. So the boundaries are blurring. So the transition or the transformation from the traditional style of IT to the new style of IT is the period we are in, right? And it's very disruptive. So
and not a lot of people really know where we are going. That's the other problem.
Not a lot of people know where we're going. So, and of course, on top of every CIO's mind, and of course the CISO's mind is, I mean, like, and how do we trust? I mean, so we are so used to having all of this information reside in our own data centers, or I mean, like, right, in our own IT shops. So now the fact, the thought of even moving this out, I mean, like, is sometimes very intimidating, right? So the way CIOs and CISOs are experimenting with this is really, I mean, like, trying to first identify the low-hanging fruits in an organization. I mean, and of course, you hold the cards close to your chest. I mean, your mission-critical apps are still, I mean, sort of managed, I mean, in the traditional way. But what they're experimenting, or the transformation has already started beginning for, I mean, like some of those low-impact applications. And as we continue to execute on those plans, and we get a certain level of comfort, I mean, knowing how these applications, whether there is, is the data available, I mean, when I need it. I mean, that's the key, right? I mean, and that's the one we are always worried about. So is it available when I need it? I mean, like, is the confidentiality, I mean, the integrity, I mean, like, the data, I mean, intact? And as CIOs and CISOs get more comfortable with it, I think, I mean, like, we'll continue to see this transformation. But bottom line, I mean, we've gone from this stage where we said, we're never going to embark on this journey to, I mean, we know this has to happen. Right. I mean, like, it's a must. I mean, like, it's inevitable. Let's embrace it, but now let's try to figure out how we can do this in a secure manner.
Right, and so as as industry is transforming and a lot of new jobs probably opening up in this sector, what sort of advice do you have for students who are probably looking and pursuing, job opportunities in this sector? Is there, do you think that they have to come from a certain background? Are you looking for folks with more multidisciplinary background? Do you think corporations actually have training programs out there? How's that working out?
It's a very challenging proposition, right? I mean, right now, I mean, I have so many openings on my team, but it's hard to find the right talent. Right. And the limited amount of talent that we have in this business, I mean, like, there's a lot of demand. So it's a classic supply and demand. Of course, everybody is competing for the limited, I mean, like, resources that we have. So a lot of us, I mean, like, go back to, I mean, like, what we've done in the past is, I mean, we got to look at, how do we, I mean, it's a greenfield, right? So we got to look at the greening aspect of it. So that's where we are trying to actively, I mean, like, engage with the local universities, I mean, like, the local, colleges that we have, to see how we can, I mean, like, go sort of, I mean, we have programs where we go talk to the students. We have internship programs available for new students who want to, I mean, like, sort of experiment with this. HP, I mean, like, being a company that's very, I mean, like, veterans friendly. We have programs with the Army, we have programs with the Department of Defense, where we actually bring in, I mean, like, some of their people, I mean, like, who want to rotate, I mean, like, through this career field. So they work, I mean, like, in our business for, I mean, like, 3 months, 6 months, sometimes before they go back to their rotations. So we have various programs in place, but at the end of the day, I mean, like, really what you need is, I mean, like, you have to have your heart, I mean, like, in this type of business. I mean, it's, of course, I mean, when you look at, I mean, the new movies, I mean, like, it seems very, enticing, right? I mean, you look at all the flash and everything, But behind that, when you take the covers off, I mean, like, it's not a very glamorous thing.
Right.
I mean, like, you're sitting at a computer screen, you're pouring through, I mean, like, thousands of events that are pouring across the screen. I mean, like, and how do you wait or for that one, I mean, event where, I mean, like, you are able to identify that something's wrong, and it's not like it's just, I mean, like, saying this is wrong, right?
Right.
So you have to spot a trend,
Right.
and then you have to dig in. So it takes a certain level of tenacity, I mean, like, for an individual, I mean, to really
get to
like
that level.
to get to that level, to
Right.
like this kind of work. But what we do is, I mean, like, we have good mentorship programs, right? So when we bring new people in, of course, nobody expects them to hit the ground running, I mean, like, on day one. But if you have the right aptitude, if you have the right, I mean, like, an approach, we have programs where we team you up with, I mean, like, other seniors on the team. So that's
a lot of cross-pollination.
There's a lot of
learning that happens.
cross-pollination. And of course, I mean, information security is such a broad field, right? I mean, it's not like there is one thing where, I mean, the common perception is anytime I say cybersecurity or information security, you're thinking hackers, I mean, like, you're thinking, how do I mean, like, figure out how to either hack into a machine or identify, I mean, a breach. But there are so many other aspects. There is the governance aspect, there is the risk management aspect, I mean, there is the policy and compliance, there is the audit function. So when you consider a career in cybersecurity, I mean, like, you have multiple avenues to pursue. I mean, there isn't just one area. I mean, like, you can look at
So there's a lot of specialization.
there's a lot
within.
of specialization. I mean, the typical organization will have a governance function, a risk and compliance. I mean, you have
Internal audits,
managed
right.
security services, delivery of those services, security operations center. So multiple different.
So as you look at the events in 2014, and you look forward at 2015, and beyond, what sort of cyber threats are at the top of your mind?
So 2014, Naim, I would say, was one of probably a defining year in cybersecurity. I mean, we saw events, I mean, that we had not seen in the past. And when I say that, in the years prior, when there was a breach, I mean, the intent was always to, I mean, like, compromise something. How do I now monetize this? And how do I try, whether it's stealing credit card information, whether it's, I mean, like, stealing somebody's personally identifiable information, and then being able to monetize it. That's where, I mean, like, we were seeing a lot of activity. But in 2014, with something like what happened at, I mean, like, Sony, right? This was a breach, I mean, like, which really shook the industry to its core, right? And the reason I say that is, I mean, they practically held the company ransom. And I mean, like, the whole objective here was to have Sony pull this movie, right? And they ultimately succeeded. But what was more important is, I mean, now you have actually a dictator in another country trying to impose some type of censorship on American citizens, right? So, and we can't. I mean, in this, I mean, like, the environment we live in, I mean, like, it's just not something that we tolerate, right? The second thing, I mean, I think was important about that was, I mean, for the first time, I mean, like, America actually blamed, I mean, like, openly laid a blame on another country, I mean, like, and we said, I mean, this country was behind the hack, right? And also, I mean, more importantly, it sort of exposed, I mean, like, how capable or how potential our adversaries are, right? I mean, like, it sort of, I mean, highlighted their capabilities. If they want to be truly disruptive, I mean, like, they have the ability to do that. So I think 2014 was that. 2015, you'll continue to, I mean, like, see more of those types, and we've already seen the big, I mean, like, Anthem breach, right? I mean, like, 80, I mean, I think was millions of, I mean, like, users data being compromised. And again, in this case, if you see what's interesting is the people were not going after medical information. I mean, they were more interested in, again, can I get somebody's social security number? Can I get somebody's other types of personally identifiable information, which they could, I mean, like, exploit.
Really harvest, yeah.
So we're going to continue to, I mean, in my opinion, see more of those. I mean, there'll probably not a moment go by where somebody is not getting hacked or breached. I forget who said this, but there are two types of companies in America today, the ones that have been breached and the ones that don't know that they're breached. Right? So it's so relevant when you think about it.
So Anil, last question basically towards our audience. If you actually have any message that you want to give to our audience, something that we have not talked about but you think is important for them to be aware of.
So the one thing that I would like the audience to take away from this is, I mean, yes, there is a lot of hype. I mean, we hear a lot about breaches. I mean, you hear the big bang things like JP Morgan being hacked or Sony being hacked or Target. And then we all think, I mean, oh my God, is it even safe? I mean, to go out and do any type of, I mean, cyber related, carry out some type of transaction or not. But I want you guys, and plus there is, I mean, all this talk about, I mean, in a big data, virtualization, cloud. But really, if you stop back for a moment and think, a lot of these breaches have been caused by, I mean, very basic things. Whether it's a user clicking on, I mean, an email that contained, I mean, some type of malicious link, right? Or people sharing passwords, or I mean, a compromise of a privileged account. So at the end of the day, I mean, it's the basic block and tackle, I mean, that really works to keep us safe. And that's why I say with the limited amount of budgets we have, I mean, I'm a big proponent of spending that money on user awareness and training. I mean, if we have users who kind of understand the basics, I mean, who knows what a good hygiene is when it comes to, I mean, being on the web, I mean, or anything related to cyber, then I think that'll go a long way. We could deploy the best technology, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's the user that's really going to help, I mean, solve this problem, right? So the more users we have who are aware of this and who can, I mean, sort of start being smart about this, I think, that way we have a bigger workforce that's defending us.
Anil, thank you again. Wonderful insights. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.